And the communist joins us now. How do you respond to that when somebody comes up to you and says, I can't vote for you because you're a communist?
I say there are reasons you might not want to vote for me, but let's be honest about my politics. I'm a democratic socialist no matter how many times President Trump calls me otherwise.
Yeah, explain the difference. What is the difference between a Democrat, a democratic socialist, and a communist?
Well, I'm a democratic socialist who's also a Democrat.
Yes. Well, a great many of the Democrat Party across the country today, we're learning on this election day, self-describe as democratic socialists now. The key word is socialist. Let's be honest. Who's kidding who? Well, a very happy Tuesday, election day to you once again. We continue to be reached at 888-630-9625. And boy, there are a lot of moving parts out there. President Trump on Truth Social weighed in as to the important elections today. New York City, New Jersey, Virginia, Minneapolis. They even got some elections out west, where they keep Portland and places like that. President Trump on Truth Social writing, the Democrats are far more likely to win the midterms and the next presidential election if we don't do the termination of the filibuster, the termination, and in parentheses he writes, the nuclear option. That's not testing nuclear weapons, though. That's a completely different thing. They're very upset about that at 60 Minutes. But the President of the United States saying Democrats are far more likely to win the midterms and the next presidential election if we don't do the termination of the filibuster, the nuclear option, because it will be impossible for Republicans to get common sense policies done with these crazed Democrat lunatics being able to block everything by withholding their votes, like the government shutdown. Today is the record number of days for a government shutdown. I believe it's 35 days, and the Democrats have voted at least 14 times, I know, to keep the federal government shut down. And then the news media blames the Republicans. It's kind of an amazing thing to see. For 3 years, nothing will be passed, the president continued, and Republicans will be blamed. That's because we can predict the corruption of the American news media, the so-called mainstream news media. Isn't that true? Yes, it is. And Republicans will be blamed. Elections, including the midterms, will be rightfully brutal. If we do not terminate the filibuster, we will get everything approved. See this? If we do terminate the filibuster, we will get everything approved like no Congress in history. We will have fair, free, and safe elections, no men in women's sports or transgender for everybody, strong borders, major tax and energy cuts, and we'll secure our Second Amendment, which the Democrats will also terminate immediately. If we don't do it, meaning getting rid of the filibuster, they're far more likely to do well in the upcoming elections, which would mean a packed Supreme Court. You know how they want to stack and pack the Supreme Court like their boy FDR wanted to do as well. 2 more states and 4 more Democrat senators, D.C. and Puerto Rico, and 8 more electoral votes. Remember, Republicans, they're going to end the filibuster as soon as they get the chance. We know this because they already tried. And the only 2 people who didn't go along are now out of office. But they have much less chance of winning if we have great policy wins after wins after wins. In fact, they will lose big and for a very long time. Terminate the filibuster now. End the ridiculous shutdown immediately. And then, most importantly, pass every wonderful Republican policy that we've dreamt of for years but never gotten. We will be the party that cannot be beaten, the smart party. President Trump, that's his Election Day message this morning on Truth Social, his own social media platform, which he created because the Democrats blocked him from Twitter and Facebook, you may recall, and they canceled him, because they're fascists, I think, they're not free speech people. They're not American in their orientation, not even close. Isn't that amazing? And so, welcome back once again. We remain at 888-630-9625. So many stories, but the big story today is certainly the election. The election in Virginia, across the river from where we are in the District of Columbia, in New Jersey, where the governor, and on in New York City, where they've got the communists running and all of that good stuff. And honestly, on Capitol Hill, where the government shutdown continues because the Democrats continue to vote to keep the government shut down. Not because the Republicans have done anything to shut the government down. Republicans have done everything, except Rand Paul, to reopen the government, and the Democrats have obstructed. Then the news media says, damn Republicans are keeping the government shut down, even though they just saw right in front of their very eyes the exact opposite was the truth. But that's your news media. Aren't they amazing? Yes, they are. Yes, sir. And again, in Virginia, we've got big goings-on there, big goings-on, such goings-on, such goings-on. Let's go to soundbite number one. Winsome Earl-Sears, who ought to be the next governor. Virginia will have their first woman governor. The racist Democrats, who are the party of the Confederate States of America, and their capital was in Richmond, Virginia, during the American Civil War, which the Democrat Party started to keep their slaves and states' rights. Because the states had the right to keep their slaves. But never mind that. Winsome Sears, a wonderful woman, Marine, U.S. Marine Corps, immigrant from Jamaica, not Haiti, like that Democrat yelled at her at a recent rally for Winsome Sears. Winsome Earl-Sears talking about Abigail Scamberger, who is the Democrat nominee to become the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Abigail should have said something, but she didn't. Politically cunning is this woman. She has failed us. We cannot have her. Abigail is for Abigail. Abigail is not for Virginia. And so I hope you will elect me again as governor. I will not fail you.
Elect her again, lieutenant governor to governor, and she's wonderful, and she's smart and capable and sweet, and a great American story, coming to the United States from Jamaica, joining the United States Marine Corps, becoming lieutenant governor of Virginia, and then today, hopefully, becoming governor, because the Scamberger person is not the person you want as governor of Virginia or any other of our states. Abigail Scamberger was also out there yelling and screaming and pounding the table.
I'm not going to be able to stop everything, every bad policy coming out of Washington.
TDS.
I want to be truthful about that. But we need a governor who is working tirelessly to mitigate every harm that might be caused by a reckless and chaotic administration.
Yeah, you guys should stop looting and committing acts of mob political violence on the streets of America. And, every bad, she's running against Trump, of course. Is Trump derangement syndrome. It's TDS day for the Democrats across America. And it doesn't matter where you look in Minneapolis and every place else. What they're doing is railing against Donald Trump and against Washington, because it is a bona fide mental illness at this point. All the bad policies coming out of Washington. Abigail Scamberger would create her own bad policies. President Trump called into a rally in Virginia by telephone, where he spoke to the Republican voters gathered because they're on the side of America.
The key races are still in play. They're very close, including governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and the legislature is all up, and vote Republican. And, if I just cover one subject, your energy prices will go way down as opposed to your energy prices going through the roof. But they're going to raise your taxes, and the crime will be rampant. The crime will be totally horrible. They'll be protecting the violent perpetrators. They'll be protecting the violent people that caused the crime.
And that's more Democrats, more crime. More Democrats, more murder. More Democrats, more political violence in the streets. Where do you think all those mobs are coming from? They didn't just appear out of thin air. The Democrat Party's been building them and grooming them. Can I say grooming? They've been grooming them. Raising that whole Occupy Wall Street thing was an organizational phase for the radical extreme left in the United States of America. And They're selling everything anti-American. Pretty amazing times that we are in. There is no doubt about that. And so Donald Trump also calling a Republican rally in Virginia, talking about the Democrats' nominee, Jay Jones, to become the Attorney General in the Commonwealth of Virginia. He's the guy who said that if he were in a room with Adolf Hitler and Pol Pot, two of history's leading mass murderers, Socialist Workers' Party in Germany under Hitler, and the Communist Party in Cambodia under Pol Pot, and they murdered millions and millions of people. And this Democrat, Jay Jones, said that if he found himself in a room with Adolf Hitler, Pol Pot, and the Republican speaker in the Virginia House, and he had only 2 bullets in his gun, that the 2 bullets would go into the head of the Republican, and he'd let Hitler and his Socialist Workers' Party live. He would let Pol Pot and his Communist Party live. And Jay Jones is the man that the Democrat Party picked. President Trump had something to say about that.
Their candidate for Virginia Attorney General is as our great governor said, he's a demented person, radical left maniac named Jay Jones. Virginia cannot allow someone with dreams of committing murder to become the Commonwealth's top law enforcement officer.
Now, again, imagine if someone like me, just imagine if you will, like the Twilight Zone, imagine if you will, that I came on the air, and I did so jokingly earlier, and said, well, imagine if I said something. I'm not running for Attorney General, Chief Law Enforcement Officer of any of our 50 states, but if I came out and said, if I was in a room and I had Adolf Hitler and Pol Pot and I know Barack Obama or Joe Biden, and I had only 2 bullets, then both bullets would go into the head of Barack Obama. And I'm sorry, what? I likely wouldn't have a long and illustrious career if I went around saying things like that. But when you're a Democrat and you're running for Attorney General of Virginia, that's okay because you got the media backing you up, and they're not on the side of civilization, are they? No, they're not. All right, Michael, let's grab a phone call. Election day in Virginia, in New Jersey, in New York, in Minneapolis, and beyond. Let's go to Marco calling from Springfield, Virginia. Marco, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris. Great show as usual.
Hey, man.
Hey, there is an election in Minneapolis, and you've got this guy Fata is running, and he's going to depose the current mayor, Mr. Wimpy is what I call him. Remember, he's the guy that cried at George Floyd's coffin, and he's being endorsed by Ilhan Omar, which doesn't surprise me because he gave his little speech in his native tongue, and I'm sure, same thing with Mandami, who did his in Hindu and Urdu, and I'm going to have to ask stupid Americans who are planning on voting for those people, who exactly, did you understand what he was saying, and who exactly are they going to represent when they get in office? I am just absolutely stunned at the stupidity of the American voter. Spamberger, by the way, she is the architect of men and women's locker rooms.
Yes,
and
she is.
I think people are finally starting to wake up. Maybe it's a little bit too late, but I heard her quote about saying she just doesn't want to win. She wants to crush Winsome Sears. And I'm going to tell you, what an absolute sad commentary on the Virginia voter if you put that clown in as our governor in office, because we'll have 6 years, not 4. Yeah. So, it's and then one more thing I'd like to add is King Obama. And it's like, will you go away already? And I have to ask, does he only have a blue shirt? Because every time we see him endorsing someone, he's got that stupid blue shirt with his rolled up sleeves, trying to act like Joe Cool. And it's like, it's time to wake up. And I'm sorry, Dick Cheney, he did say he'd do whatever he could not to get Trump in the office. And let's not forget who the security chief was for Butler, Pennsylvania, when we almost lost Donald Trump to an assassin's bullet. So I have no remorse for the Cheneys. Thank you for your service, but move on.
Yeah, and you're a career Army yourself.
Yes, I am, and
yes.
I'm proud to serve. And I saw Dick Cheney and many a president during my time in the Army in support ceremonies. And I've got to tell you, very controversial during his reign as vice president, but even more controversial when Donald Trump was running for president.
Yeah.
And remember, I said Newsmax is a great station. Greg Kelly did an expose on Curtis Sliwa, which I wish he would have dropped out, but he's a fraud. I'm sorry to say it, but he's a fraud.
Curtis Sliwa, based on a Newsmax special that they did on Curtis Sliwa. I haven't seen the special myself, but it's New York is tough. New York is in a tough place. They're a sinking ship, aren't they? It's rough out there. Marco, you came in loaded for bear, and you're right. Oh yeah, speaking of which, we got a bear. That's California. That's the governor Gavin Newsom. He's poking the bear. I'm like, isn't the Soviet Union the bear? I think it is. Yeah, but Minneapolis, they're voting for mayor, and Marcos, as you referenced, Jacob Fry is the left-wing clown there now. And the new guy, and you're right, Ilhan Omar is out there stumping for him. Omar Fattah is, and he's a full-blown jihadi, Somali immigrant, and he wants to be the mayor of Minneapolis and probably will be. The Democrat Party is in bed with the jihad, and the left and the jihad are making a great deal of headway in the United States. You know, Ilhan Omar's family, her father, for example, was a colonel in the communist guard in Somalia when they fled Somalia, but her father was one of the bad guys. She said he was an educator. He educated people in genocide and how to murder large numbers of people in Somalia because they're part of the socialist representative. Ilhan Omar said her father was an educator. Her father was a colonel in the army of communist Somalia. The United Nations described that regime as one of the worst human rights violators in all of Africa, which is setting the bar pretty high. But she was out there yesterday campaigning for another socialist in Minneapolis, running for mayor. That is coming up.
Some people did something.
Yeah, that's right. The Democrats are running a radical socialist jihadi in Minneapolis to become mayor. His name is Omar Fattah. Omar Fattah. He self-describes as a democratic socialist, just like all these communists like Mamdani in New York and of course, Bernie Sanders. And you've got Ilhan Omar, whose father was a colonel in one of the most corrupt regimes in Africa at the time, in Somalia, and they were massacring people based on their tribal affiliations, and then they were overthrown, and they had to flee the country, and Ilhan Omar, as a child, lived in a refugee camp for a while, then came here, and now she's a member of Congress, and she has no respect for the United States whatsoever. None. But they got this guy, and the Democrats are planning on putting him in the mayor's office in Minneapolis, and at the same time, Zohran Mamdani in Gracie Mansion, where the mayor of New York lives, in New York City. And they're not alone, because they've got members of Congress all over the place that are socialists. And again, remember what Vladimir Lenin said, the Bolshevik revolutionary, the goal of socialism is communism. And the goal of communism is, of course, slavery. I added the last part myself because he wasn't selling slavery. He was selling something very generous. But let's go to this Democrat who's running for mayor of Minneapolis. They're calling him the Zohran Mamdani of Minneapolis, as though Minneapolis needs their own Zohran Mamdani. But okay. And isn't that amazing? And here's what the man who would be mayor has to say. Got to push the button and then
And seeing the long lines about a 30-minute wait was really energizing. I think people are really excited about the race this year, so hoping for great things.
Yes, that was the man who would be mayor, Omar Fattah, Democratic socialist, trying to defeat the weepy left-wing loon Jacob Fry, who's been mayor there for a long time. I think he was mayor through all the riots and the looting, and And that poor George Floyd guy who died of cardiac failure while resisting arrest yet again. How many felonies in that guy's life? You know, the more felonies you have, the more the Democrat Party wants you to date their daughter. Of course, their daughter might be their son, so you got to keep your eyes peeled for that. And at this rally yesterday where Omar Fattah was out there being a socialist, being a communist, wanting to defeat the weepy, riot-loving Jacob Fry, guess who was standing next to him? Oh, no, it was Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar was standing next to him at the big rally, and Ilhan Omar wanted to jump in.
This election is about affordability. It's about transparency. It's about accountability.
Right.
And it certainly is about creating a safer, more prosperous city. And I just want people to make sure that they come out and provide the kind of change that Minneapolis needs.
Come out and provide the kind of change that Minneapolis needs. Well, you haven't had enough rioting or arson or looting or attacks on the police or crime or because George Floyd, who was passing counterfeit bills to an actual immigrant who was trying to make his way in the United States of America, and the Democrats undermine him and support the criminal. And then the police try to arrest the big, strong criminal for yet another felony, and he's resisting arrest yet again. And the autopsy found that he died of a cardiac episode, and that's basically a heart attack. And then they put the police officer in prison where a Democrat stabbed him. That's Derek Chauvin. And a Democrat in prison stabbed the police officer 22 times. And that's not a news story. The criminals are the bad guys. Used to be, anyway. To the Democrats, the criminals are the good guys. Ilhan Omar is out there. She's a member of Congress. A Democrat member of Congress. Isn't that amazing? These people are very unwell indeed. Something that Michael and I were kicking around a little earlier. You remember when Dick Cheney, who died yesterday at the age of 84, remember when he accidentally shot that guy in the face with a shotgun when they were out hunting birds? Remember this? It was a teeny tiny shotgun. It wasn't a big shotgun, but the man that he shot was a friend of his, and they're out hunting, and his name was Harry Whittington. Harry Whittington was shot by Dick Cheney in the face in 2006 on a hunting trip. And Dick Cheney died yesterday, but Harry Whittington, who was shot in the face by Dick Cheney, you remember then he apologized, and everybody thought that was funny. But I got to say, the way he had positioned himself, you got a line of men with shotguns hunting birds walking through the tall grass, and you don't walk way out in front where the birds come flying up because that's where the shotgun pellets go. And he apologized afterward. He's like, man, I was in the wrong place. Because he was in the wrong place when you're out hunting birds, you don't go downrange from where the people with the shotguns are. It's kind of like, on a golf course, when people are teeing off out of the tee box, you don't go walk halfway up the fairway because that's where the golf balls are going to be coming at you at 150 miles an hour, and you don't want them to hit you in the leg or anything. So you don't go out in front of the person driving a golf ball, and you don't go out in front of the person that has a shotgun is waiting for birds to fly out of the. But that was something. He did suffer wounds. He did actually apologize, and he died. Harry Whittington did in 2023, and that was sad. But Dick Cheney outlived him. Isn't that crazy? Harry Whittington, Texas attorney, shot by Cheney during a 2006 hunting trip, dies. And again, this is in February of 2023. So a little over 2 years ago. Well, more than 2 years ago. Harry Whittington, kind of a tough one. That was terrible. He was 95 years old. 95 years old when he died about 2 years ago. Died at his home in Austin, Texas, and he, that was an awful thing. Democrats applauded that, and they were happy about it. I've got we were talking. Bill Hess, the big boss here, program director here at my mothership radio station, WMAL in Washington, our nation's capital, and Michael Piercy and I, we were talking and said, you ever meet Dick Cheney? I was like, yeah, I met Dick Cheney a good handful of times over the years, and various when he was Secretary of Defense, and I guess when he was Vice President also, Vice President for a long time. He was a member of the House of Representatives before he was picked to be Secretary of Defense. And and I told this story. I'll try to be quick, but told this story earlier today. I went when Dick Cheney was a member of the House of Representatives. He had just been selected to become Secretary of Defense, but hadn't gone through the confirmation process yet. And I had been invited to this dinner in Washington at a banquet room and, a black tie dinner. So I was wearing a tuxedo because that's what you do when it's a black tie dinner. And I was seated at a table, and to my left was Pete Williams, who was Dick Cheney's spokesman, former TV news reporter in Wyoming. That Dick Cheney, when he became a member of the House, he tapped Pete Williams, who was a gay man, and everybody was anti-gay, right? And Dick Cheney picked Pete Williams to become his spokesman on Capitol Hill. And he brought Pete Williams from Wyoming, TV news reporter, to Washington to be his spokesman. And then he brought Pete Williams to the Pentagon to be the spokesman at the Pentagon. And then the first Gulf War happened and all that. Pete Williams became, he spent a lot of time on TV, became quite famous. Then he became an NBC news reporter. And he was always a good guy and a smart guy. And so I was seated at this table. And to my left was Pete Williams. And to his left was Dick Cheney, then a congressman, but had just been nominated to become the Secretary of Defense. And here's how long ago this was, because it was before Gulf War I, right? And here's how long ago this was. Nobody had cell phones. That's how long ago it was. Dick Cheney, sitting 2 seats to my left, grabbed his belt because his pager went off. And he pulled his pager up and showed it to people at the table. And he said, I just got paged. I'm like, oh, that's impressive. What are you, a doctor or something, right? And so I got paged. I got to go make a phone call. And he got up and he started to walk away, and he dug his hands down in his pockets, and he turned around and he walked back to the table. And he said to Pete Williams, he said, I don't have any change. Give me a quarter. And Pete Williams didn't even stand up, dug his hand down into his right pocket, his pants pocket, and pulled up a coin. And Dick Cheney's hand was extended, open, palm up. And Pete Williams slapped a coin into his hand, and Cheney said, thanks, and he turned and he walked away. And he just got a few steps away, 5 steps maybe. And he stopped and he turned around and he came back and he held up a nickel and he said, this is a nickel. And Pete Williams said, yeah, I know, it's all I have. And all right. And Cheney said, I need a quarter. And he's looking around and he looked at me and I kind of shrugged and I'm like, I don't work for you. And I stood up and I dug down in my pocket, and sure enough, I had a quarter. I had a quarter in my pocket. And I said, oh, I got a quarter. And I said, and he was just about to take over the Defense Department budget. I said, $400 billion a year, and I'm giving you a quarter. All right? And he did that Dick Cheney smirk. It's not like he laughed out loud ever in his life, but he did that Dick Cheney smirk, the crooked smile, one side of his mouth, right? Yeah, that crooked thing, and kind of rolled his eyes a little. And I slapped the quarter in his hand and said, you're welcome. And he turned and walked away and went and made his phone call. And he still owes me that quarter. I never got that quarter back. I never got repaid for that quarter. But it was a silly little moment, and he was a very quiet guy. He mumbled, but he was not bereft of a sense of humor. He shot his friend in the face and then made him apologize. That was kind of interesting. So we got that. And that's just one. I think that was the first time, probably the first time that I ever met Dick Cheney and talked to Dick Cheney. But that's not important now, because that's crazy talk, isn't it? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Old Dick Cheney. Yeah, the man that he shot in the face died 2 years ago at the age of 95. Hey, sorry you shot me in the face. Sorry I got in the way of your shotgun blast. I know I was in the wrong place. Isn't that amazing? All right, let's get back to some of this Election Day stuff, because in New Jersey, they've got a governor's competition going on, and they call her Mikey Sherrill. That's a woman. And you could call her Mickey. Oh, Mickey, what a pity. Your plane didn't land. But Mikey Sherrill, she's a lady, and she wants to be the governor. She's running against a Republican who seems to be a pretty great guy, Jack Ciattarelli. And Jack Ciattarelli, wonderful moment. Night before last, he was hanging out at his neighborhood bar, Murph's Bar, and the owner announced that his son had just arrived coming back from Kuwait, where he had been stationed, and he came back in to be with his father running for governor of New Jersey in time for Election Day, and it was a really kind of a great moment. It really was. It might choke you up even, and I don't choke up all the time, but I saw it, and it was a little bit choke-upable, I got to say. But here's Mikey, Cheryl. I always want to sing, "Hey, Mickey, what a pity," but here's Mikey Cheryl. She's the Democrat, and what's she running against? Because we played audio earlier out of Minneapolis, and I'm running against Trump, and out of Virginia, and I'm going to fight Trump every step of the way. And here's New Jersey. Trump is not on the ballot.
It's going to be a continued fight against Trump's vision.
What?
In Washington.
What?
As he tries to stifle opportunity.
Stifle opportunity?
For people across this country.
For people across this country.
That with all of you, New Jersey will continue to be a beacon of light and hope for people across the country, across the world, but certainly for people across New Jersey.
I think New Jersey has always been viewed by the entire world as a beacon of light, hasn't it? And organized crime and all the dead bodies in the swamps and things like that. And all the Lincoln Town cars filled with bodies in the trunk that are submerged in the swamps of New Jersey. That's what makes it a beacon of light, I think. Isn't that great? So, yeah, New Jersey, and that's what she's. But Trump bad. She's running against Trump. And I'm sorry, he wants to stifle opportunity in New Jersey and across the country. Why? What kind of an idiotic thing is that to say?
New Jersey will continue to be a beacon of light for people across New Jersey.
Sure. At least for the Gambino family, and that's the beacon of light that they're searching for, aren't they? Aren't they amazing? Yes, they are. Jack Ciattarelli responded to this because he noticed that this woman, Mikey Cheryl, that she becomes governor, she's gonna fight against Trump because she doesn't like Trump. Jack Ciattarelli's having none of that.
My opponent wants you to believe that it's President Trump's fault. If you get a flat tire tonight on the way home, she's going to blame it on the president. There's nothing she won't blame on the president. Does the president have anything to do with our property taxes? Does he have anything to do with our electricity bills?
No. But you know who did have something to do with electricity bills? Barack Obama did. When he famously said, under my plan of cap and trade, your electricity costs will necessarily skyrocket because that's the Democrat Party plan.
Under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket.
They will necessarily skyrocket under his plan. And then when you see electricity costs skyrocketing, the news media never says, hey, this is the Democrat Party's plan. Isn't this what Barack Obama promised or threatened? Because he's slowing the rise of the oceans, Did you know that a recent study revealed that just 1 year after an abortion, women are 50% more likely to need psychiatric treatment, and they're 87% more likely to experience personality or behavioral disorders? That's not women's health care. That's trauma. But at the great organization Preborn, women find a real kind of care, the kind that heals. When a woman walks into a preborn clinic, their network of clinics across the country, she's welcomed with open arms. She can see her baby by way of an ultrasound, waving at her and smiling and winking, and she's offered a hope-filled series of choices. And if she chooses life, then Preborn continues walking with her for up to 2 years and providing maternity clothes and diapers and counseling and teach you how to be a new mother and all that, so much more. Preborn helps care for the whole woman and the precious baby growing inside of her. As you think about your year-end giving, and you're looking at, hey, the end of the year's coming, who am I going to give to? Consider the greatest investment that you could ever make, the gift of life. And all you have to do is dial pound 250. When prompted, you say the keyword baby. That's appropriate. Pound 250, and the keyword is baby. Or you can go to Al Gore's amazing internet and visit preborn.com/plant. That's preborn.com/PLANTE. All of your gifts are tax deductible, of course, and Preborn is a 5-star rated charity. That's a fact. All right, so yeah, the Democrats are all running against Donald Trump, who is not on the ballot. And Ciattarelli's right. They get a flat tire tonight. They're going to blame Trump for it. It is a mental illness. And they just want higher prices for everything and more crime.
it's going to be a continued fight against Trump's vision in Washington as he tries to stifle opportunity.
Well, the story was flying all over the place yesterday that Nancy Pelosi would step down from Congress. Yeah, you have to get a tow truck to pull her out of there. Today, they're shooting it down because everything they say is a lie. So that may mean that she is going to step down. Just lunacy. I've got more President Trump coming up and more New Jersey and more New York coming up. Right now, let's go to the telephones. Let's go to David calling from Alexandria, Virginia. David, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris, how are you?
I'm great, David. What do you know? What do you say, huh?
First of all, I'm glad when you were sitting next to Cheney when his pager went off that he did not have one of those Mossad-issued pagers to Hezbollah.
Good
that
point.
Would explode when you responded.
Very good point.
You could have been injured.
Yeah, everyone could have been slain.
Good news, bad news. I voted up and down the ticket today, Republican, in Alexandria. But there were some write-in positions, only Democrats versus write-ins, and I voted for you for sheriff in Alexandria. So you could get a decent second income and a cool cop car to drive around.
You know...
And I've asked for all Alexandrians to vote for you write-in.
That would be so great. I've always wanted to be the sheriff. That is great. In Alexandria, Virginia...
You may want to issue a statement saying that if you're elected, you will not serve, like LBJ.
Yes. If nominated, and if elected, I will not serve. No, I'd like to be the sheriff of Alexandria, actually. They have cool cars, too.